welcome everybody to today's episode of the Tech Talk Show with me, Kazeem. I have Ulysses Neves on the show with me today. Hi, Ulysses, and welcome to the Tech Talk Show.
Hello, cousin. Thank you for the
Yes.
opportunity to join.
So today we're going to be discussing passwordless authentication. But before we delve into the topic proper now, do you mind, Ulysses, to introduce yourself to my audience real quick?
Definitely. So I've been working in the IT field for about 13 years from now. Currently, I am technical advisor in the Microsoft Azure Identity team, mainly providing support in the tools such as Windows Hello for Business, EDFS, any Azure AD authentication methods that we have available in the Microsoft portfolio. And yep, currently working for Microsoft for about 2.5 years with specifically with identity applications.
Ulysses, some people will find it a little difficult to wrap their head around the whole idea, the move beyond using password to now using passwordless authentication, right? So do you mind? Can you please educate my audience a little bit on why they should stop using password and go passwordless?
Definitely. So this is more of a security concern, right? Passwords are really can be exploited by attacks such as brute force methods, credential stuffing, phishing, keylogging. Man in the middle, people can have weak passwords, and it's really, really important to secure those credentials, those authentications. So, what can passwordless bring in terms of security to the authentication, right? So we can use the physical tokens. We can use certificates, fingerprint, a mobile phone application. These are the possible ways of using passwordless in the authentication. So we avoid having the user to memorize, the passwords. And normally, if you see that the users tend to use the same password, they tend to use a weak passwords that are easy to remember, and removing the password from the authentication really gets your environment more secure concerning those attacks that we can see here.
Why do you think we need to get rid of passwords when we now have technology such as MFA? I mean, MFA is working just fine. So why go passwordless when MFA works?
Yeah, it's a journey, right? The MFA really help us secure the authentication, but sometimes the customers and the users get frustrated because they have to provide two authentication methods, such as they need to provide their password, they need to do the MFA, to apply the MFA from a mobile app, they have to respond an SMS because of the MFA request. So passwordless is another step going to the zero trust deployment model. So you have the passwordless. So the method you are gonna use is already MFA supported. So that is really more secure. It doesn't annoy much the users in terms of providing two authentication methods every time the user needs to authenticate against an application. That should be the main reason. The passwordless is the next step for the customers who have already been using MFA for quite some time.
Thank you very much for that response. I just wanted to make sure that we get that one out of the way so we don't confuse people, right? So
Definitely.
so let me ask, yes. So how does the Azure and Microsoft 365 passwordless authentication, how does it work? And can you also tell us a little bit about the options and methods that we have available?
Definitely. So for Microsoft Azure, we currently have the Windows Hello for Business that relies on fingerprint, face recognition, iris detection, and the PIN, which is based on certificate, right? Does not rely on password, and it's of course protected by MFA methods. We have the FIDO security keys, which are the keys that are used for smart cards as well, and the Microsoft Authenticator app. These are the three options we have today. We have some options in preview, which are the Azure AD certificate-based authentication, the TAP, the temporary access pass, and the SMS-based authentication, which is, I guess it's in GA already. But the main and mostly used today are the three first ones: Windows Hello for Business, Authenticator app, and the FIDO2 security keys.
I'm sure some of the users or some of our viewers might want to really know if there is a prerequisite to go in passwordless. Is there a prerequisite? Is can they do it with any machine, any laptop? Is there any prerequisite required for going passwordless?
Definitely. So Windows Hello for Business always depends on what do you have as infrastructure, right? So currently we have the hybrid deployment, we have the Azure AD only deployment, and we have the on-prem only deployment. So always depends on the organization. What does the organization have in terms of infrastructure? Okay, so in terms of Microsoft Authenticator app, FIDO2 keys, mainly you need to have, at least for Azure passwordless, you need to have the combined registration, right, which is basically SSPR, plus the multi-factor authentication register. You need to have the users onboarded into MFA. That's why I said it's a second step for the customers who have already been using MFA. So it's some sort of cultural thing, because users are already accustomed to that, and users should have already been registered for Azure MFA and SSPR. Those are basically the main requirements, but depending, we can have more. For example, Authenticator app, you need to have the mobile device registered into Azure AD. So in the end of this session, I will share with you a link so the audience can check which are the requirements for each passwordless authentication method, that can guide them understand what is the best option for them.
So now some people might also be wondering if this is something that is super complex to set up or to turn on. So do you mind? Can you show us how easy it is to set up passwordless authentication, say with a Microsoft 365 account, if you will?
Sure, sure. So let me share with you something. Okay, let me share my screen. I have two examples here. One is regarding the passwordless, and one is regarding Windows Hello for Business. Let me see if I can share my screen now. So this is are the methods for passwordless authentication. So once you have all the requirements right in your environment, you just enable it here. Okay, you select which users you plan to onboard, and then you start saving that, and then you enable the passwordless authentication. And of course, if you have a POC, which is part of the onboarding, which is part of the journey, right, if you have any issues impacting users, you can immediately remove the user from here. You can immediately disable the passwordless, so you don't have that impact that you need to replicate, you need to wait for any configuration replication. This is immediate. Once you delete the user, once you remove it here or delete the policy, the user will not see the option for passwordless, right? And here is another example of a Windows Hello for Business enrollment. So this is one of the deployment models for Windows Hello for Business certificate trust. And the main difference that we have in the user perspective is, once you enroll for the PIN, you enroll Windows Hello for Business in the certificate trust scenario, and the cloud trust, which is a new one, is already, the authentication is already, does not need to wait for the sync, just like key trust. Let's go for it. Okay, here we have the post login that we call for Windows Hello enrollment process. This is only achievable because we have the prerequisites in place, right? You should have at least a device registered against Azure AD. The user should be replicated against Azure AD. Now I'm asked for MFA. I'm approving that in my authenticator app now. This is because we require the MFA. The Windows Hello already is protected by
Okay.
MFA. If you don't have MFA, the prompt does not come. Okay, so I'm gonna set up
Okay.
a pin.
So it will mean that we cannot proceed with this without having MFA in place.
Definitely, that is one of
Okay.
the
The
requirements.
prerequisites. Okay. Okay.
And this is one of the steps. Okay, now I can sign in with the pin. Good. Let me just do a sign out because I signed it with the password. And now I'm gonna sign in with the pin. I can also sign in with the password, right? But it enabling the Windows Hello, I am able to sign in, and I am able to sign in without my password, right? So, like I said, this is one of the steps in the passwordless journey because the users started getting accustomed to not use the password. They in this scenario on the Windows Hello for Business scenario, they only use the password if they need to reset the pin, if they forgot the pin or somehow they had TPM issues that could avoid the user signing in using the Windows Hello for Business credential. But this is definitely the first step to stop using password in the organization.
Okay, thank you very much, Ulysses, for that demo. But I want to ask you, in trying to wrap up now, for those new to the whole idea of passwordless, what are some of those steps now that they need to take on their journey to going passwordless, right? And what do you see as some of the pitfalls that they need to avoid?
Yes, definitely. So the main journey, the most important thing, and I guess that's where people spend so much time on it, is defining the strategy, not only which passwordless authentication method they will deploy, but also try to understand the organization, which are the work personas, the people from each area, which are the applications they use, because the main challenge for passwordless is legacy applications that does not support the modern authentication protocols such as SAML or OpenID, which are required to have MFA, to have passwordless working fine. So understanding which area uses each applications, then the company has this challenge of adapting or integrating these new protocols to those applications. And then you can start having a POC in each area so that you start getting users getting accustomed to use the passwordless. But of course, the good thing is that if you need a rollback, it's immediate. As I shared in the Azure portal, once you have any issues that you need to immediately stop the passwordless, you can do that, and it's immediate action in the and impact in the user side. So after you have the users already using Windows Hello for Business, they don't use anymore the password unless they need to reset the PIN or any sort of other actions that require it or applications that require it. But once you have user accustomed to use passwordless, then you have a few policies, domain policies, MDM policies that you can force the user to not use password to sign into applications or to sign into the Windows machine. So these are, like I said, it's a journey, and the company needs to look inside to the areas and understand what is the maturity they have for each phase in the passwordless journey, right? So yeah, it's basically these attentions they need to have a succeeded journey to running to the passwordless.
So for those watching this now, or people who are going to be watching this at a later time, and they pick up the interest, they are interested in learning just a little bit more about passwordless authentication or the Microsoft passwordless authentication, where can they learn more? Or what information do you want to leave these people with?
That's a great question. Thank you. So I've pasted here in the chat. Maybe you can share with the audience. There are three articles which I found mainly for Microsoft passwordless methods. So passwordless is just one of the solutions for zero trust that we mainly ask customers to follow, to protect the environment. And these three articles share what are the steps, like I mentioned here, the steps to go to plan, to run, and to succeed in the passwordless journey. There are some options in the first article, in the first link, for which are the passwordless authentication methods available for Azure Active Directory, and how can they start evaluating if they have the prerequisites, what would be the prerequisite, how can they plan which is the best method for them, considering what they have in their infrastructure, and if they have or not, for instance, MFA implemented. So if a company does not have MFA implemented and they want to go for the passwordless journey, the first step is have the user enabled for MFA and accustomed to use MFA. So they can check on the first link which are the prerequisites, the options they have available, and of course, if they consider themselves mature to go for the passwordless journey, having the MFA and the prerequisites, just choose the passwordless option and go for it. We need to keep it secure, isn't it?
Sure. So thank you very much, Ulysses, for your time on the show today. But before we say bye bye now, for those looking to connect with you on the internet, how can they reach you? How can they connect with you on the internet?
Sure, they can reach out on LinkedIn, Twitter. My profile is at Dez Neves. I have a blog website called www.ulyssesneves.com, where I post normally some troubleshooting tips regarding Azure AD issues, device registration, so they can reach out, provide feedback. Would be great to have feedback from the audience. And yeah, anytime if someone needs or have any query related to this subject, just reach out. I'll be happy to help you with.
Okay, all right. So you've heard it now from Ulysses himself. So here is where we're going to call it a wrap on today's episode of the Tech Talk. So thank you very much once again, Ulysses, for your time, for spending time with me on the Tech Talk show today. So from myself and Ulysses now, it's a bye bye, and let's do this again another time.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Kazin. Have a great day. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.